Welcome to the Level Up Lab, a show where we discuss fitness, nutrition, and all things wellness. We want to demystify what it takes to be healthy and strong while having fun along the way. Sometimes we'll chat, sometimes we'll have guest experts, and sometimes we will go through rigorous clinical trials that either support or refute generally accepted practices in fitness and nutrition. Tyler and Dan are the founders and owners of Level Up Fitness in Boca Raton, the premier strength training gym in South Florida. We are fierce advocates that building and maintaining lean muscle mass is the key to a long and healthy life. For anyone who wants to be strong, fit, and healthy well into old age, listen to Tyler and Dan lay out the path in a fun and entertaining way. We hope you share and enjoy. Welcome back to the Level Up Lab, everybody. So we are now in our next installment. I know it's been a little bit, and we are now back with another episode, and we have a lot to go over today. I am joined, my name is Tyler.
I'm Dan.
And we actually have a special guest here. We have one of our members by the name of Chuck Stout with us here because we have a couple of topics we're going to be going over, and we want to have Chuck share his testimony today as far as what it's like, one, being a member at Level Up, but also some of the things he's done to get such great results.
Yeah, I've actually known Chuck for quite a while, and Chuck's had a pretty amazing transformation in the time he's been with us at Level Up, and he wants to share his insights, and I think he's going to have a lot of interesting knowledge that will be applicable to many, if not all of our members too. So today's episode is going to be a few things. Chuck's transformation. We're going to talk about GLP-1 drugs and how they affect your workouts is really the angle we're going to be taking. Chuck's going to tell his story, but we're going to talk a little about that. And we're going to get into the biggest topic that we get asked about too, which is creatine supplementation. So we're going to kind of break it up into two pieces, right?
Yeah, so we're going to, just like I said, it's a very fully loaded episode today. We're going to talk quite a bit about, obviously Chuck's experience with it and with GLP-1s, and then roll into creatine and kind of go over some of the myths and questions that we hear a lot with our members ask and talk about, and to make sure we can kind of clear some of that up.
Yeah, but Chuck, we're super excited to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, one of the things that many people have to think about in their lives is optimal weight management, right? Not just exercise, but good, healthy nutrition, diet. And you've had a pretty amazing transformation over the time that I've known you. And we see you every single day at Level Up. You work so hard, super disciplined, lifting heavy, pushing yourself, and you've had the results, amazing results. And so, we've talked offline, we've talked in the gym, and you said you really wanted to kind of share your story, and we said, yeah, let's do that. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what this process has been like for you and your time at Level Up?
Sure. So I'm one of those people that have, for many, many years, struggled with weight. I'm 58 years old now, so as you get older, it gets a little bit harder to keep it off and be disciplined.
Yeah.
A lot of it's discipline, and life gets busy.
Yeah.
I am an insurance professional by day, and I had children and everything that gets in life's way and gives you an excuse maybe to not be disciplined. And for many years, I just felt my weight kept creeping up.
Yeah.
And when I was in my early 40s, I buckled down, I got in shape, I started running, doing half marathons and doing just different ways of losing weight, not Weight Watchers, but a Nutrisystem.
Oh, I did, sure.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Lost 50 pounds and subsequently gained it all back over time.
Not unusual story.
Not unusual.
Very common, yeah.
And so over time, all my lab work kept getting worse. High cholesterol, high blood pressure. My mom's a diabetic. I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic, really for about 10 years. And they put me on metformin.
Oh, wow.
So I was constantly what doctors do. They give you drugs, right?
Yeah.
And finally, last year, about 18 months ago, my wife joined Level Up.
Yep.
We had a lot of friends that were members. She joined, spoke very highly of it, and I decided to try it out, and I joined it last May, as you all know. I was dedicated, going to the gym, doing the right things as far as lifting weights, but not quite doing the right things as far as eating
nutrition,
healthy. That's where you guys are great about teaching us as members proper nutrition, protein, macros, all the buzzwords. But I still wasn't seeing the weight loss that I felt I needed. At that time, I had a friend who had tried a GLP-1.
Okay.
And I told her that she was my guinea pig. She tried it, and I said, you try it. Let me know your experience. And she had a great experience with it. And I just said, let's talk about this. Let's maybe do this. I had a doctor a couple of years ago that we talked about it when it was just really about 2-3 years ago when it really became talked about medically a lot. And the doctor said, well, your health plan doesn't cover this for you, but I can tell them that you're diabetic.
And you were pre-diabetic.
I was pre-diabetic.
Yeah, right.
But I sell insurance for a living.
Right.
And I know how medical records can be important.
Right.
And I said, I don't want anything on my records that says I'm diabetic if I'm not diabetic.
Yeah, good.
So that is not a solution for me.
Right.
Yes, I was pre-diabetic. So I finally said, let's try the GLP-1. And I went on it starting in February. And through my primary care doctor, I did change doctors, by the way. I didn't use that same doctor. And I have had great experience.
Yeah.
I see the doctor every couple of months, do the blood work, and it's been a great experience for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, at your gym, it's like a community. You start to see all the same faces in the workout.
Yeah.
And people were seeing me get skinny.
Getting a transformation.
The transformation. Yes, I was at the gym. Yes, I was lifting weights. But a lot of people started asking, gosh,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You're looking great. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of people, there's a little bit of a stigma to it. Are you cheating?
Yeah.
Is it cheating?
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to look at yourself and say, what do I need to do?
Yeah, and I'll stop there for a second because that's a great point because the stigmatization around GLP-1s is real, right? And now Tyler and I, we're not medical doctors. We're not, trained in the science of GLP-1s. We're not going to opine on GLP-1s. But it is important that however you're losing weight, muscle management, preserving muscle is super important, and especially if you're losing weight relatively rapidly. So to us, we think about weight loss on a GLP-1 exactly the same as a calorie restricted diet because it's essentially doing the same thing. It's just one is being induced medically and one is being induced with behavior, but the actual behavior is the same because the GLP-1 just makes you eat less, right? And so at the end of the day, this is calorie restriction, and you're getting weight loss. The weight loss that we've seen and in the studies show is roughly 1/3 muscle, 2/3 fat on GLP-1s, which is exactly what it is in a calorie restricted diet as well. So again, for us, we think about it in terms of how do we help anyone who's in a calorie restriction, however they're doing it, to maintain and grow muscle, which is something you've been able to do, right? So the stigmatization, we don't understand why people, because there's tremendous health risks of being too heavy.
Correct.
Right. And so we know what those risks are. They're very well documented as far as metabolic diseases, diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease. Right. So, there's a stigma with that. And then there's a stigma if people are doing something about that. Right. And we believe that if you're maintaining your weight in a healthy way under the guidance of a physician, great for you. We're just going to learn how to help you build muscle. So talk a little bit about this combination now where you have been able to preserve most of your muscle mass, right? As you've been losing weight.
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot of it because I've really never in my life consistently lifted weights. As a younger, I played soccer and played football and you do some there, but I've never done it like I'm doing it now. Where I'm here, my goal is 5 to 6 days a week in the gym, lifting weights and heavy weights. And I can bench press now more than I ever have in my life.
Which is amazing. You say you're 58 years old.
Years
so
old.
at 58 years old, you're max benching more than you ever have before.
Yes.
And you're way less. There's less of you, which, when it comes to weightlifting, you got to have some mass to put up
to move
numbers,
mass.
To put up numbers. And when there's less of you, it is harder. So that's a massive testament that you really are maintaining and growing muscle, if anything, at your age with the results you've gotten, even at a lower weight. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I truthfully, since I started this, I listen to a lot of podcasts about it. I read a lot of studies about GLPs and losing weight, losing muscle. I'm very conscious about eating protein.
Yeah.
I eat protein every meal. try to max out as much as I can. Yes, I'm was in a calorie deficit, and I am at the weight now I want to maintain.
Good.
By the way,
Yeah.
I'm down to the weight. I'm good just tightening up.
Yeah.
So I'm on a maintenance at this point, but protein is so important. I do take creatine.
Yep.
Anything that can give me strength is important.
Yeah.
Vitamins, supplements, things like that. I try to stay hydrated as much as possible. All the things you're supposed to do anyway. I mean, I just feel like this medication, and every day, more and more positive studies come out about it.
Yeah.
Just today on the news, I saw it just got approved for the treatment of fatty liver disease.
Right.
It's getting approved to stop sleep apnea.
Right.
I don't snore anymore.
Right.
I don't take any of my medications anymore.
Yeah, a lot of those things are comorbidities of weight, right?
Yeah.
So it's not surprising if your weight comes down. Sleep apnea is highly correlated with weight management.
That's what I was going to say. Is that it's very much correlated, even if whether you're on a drug or not. Like if you're just losing weight, there's going to be more things in your life that will become better. Your quality of life improves, and so many of those things that were issues before are now, you're not having to live with them.
Now, for those people listening who are hearing Chuck's story, and if you've seen Chuck, you know what great shape he's in, and you're going to go run out and find out about GLP-1s. Look, talk to your physicians, right? And it is not right for everybody. Everybody's individual, and it is a medical decision with a medical doctor. But let's just go back for a second to the weight training part, because obviously that's the part that we have some opinions on too. You sound like you've made a tremendous number of behavior changes, right? You're talking about like hydration, protein, maintenance calories now after weight loss, which is not easy for people to do, and then lifting heavy. Talk about that part of how do you prioritize these things today? You're still a busy man. You still work, full-time job. You still have a family. Like a lot of those things haven't changed, even though your kids are older now. But, how do you still end up prioritizing these things and doing all these good behaviors, in your busy life?
Well, for me, it just keeps building on each other. Every time you hear someone say, "You're looking good," "Wow, what are you doing?" Hitting the gym, and we support each other in your gym.
Yeah.
Right. We see a lot of the same faces. We spot each other, and that just builds on itself. And I think so much of life is habits, good habits, bad habits. I've personally just gotten in a zone.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is just where I am.
Yeah.
Every day, I protein, hydrate.
It's all just part of your day.
Going to the gym is on my calendar.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's an appointment on my calendar.
That's a big one, yeah.
And it's just positive feedback from everybody in your life.
Yeah.
And then you just do it for yourself.
Amazing.
Again, I look at all my lab results.
Yeah, they're all better.
They're fantastic. They're better than they've ever been.
That's amazing.
So
amazing.
I have to keep it up. But as you said, this it's not for everybody. There can be side effects. Sure. Different people react differently. But the weight training is vital because I don't want to be what we call a skinny fat person.
Yeah.
Right.
Tyler, maybe you can talk a little bit about this. Like, what should anyone who's in a big weight loss period, however they're doing it, what would you tell them to do differently when they come to the gym if they were doing that?
Yeah, well, and to your point earlier, what we're saying about how the energy regulation is so important, and when you're on a GLP-1, you're taking in way less calories. But you're still trying to do all those high activity things, high energy activities, and exactly, and like that can be very difficult when you're in a deficit. It's the same thing as if somebody comes in a calorie restricted deficit. It's like, okay, you're going to be maybe a little bit weaker, you're going to be more sluggish, you might feel a little lightheaded and dizzy. That is very common with a lot of people that try to start losing weight on top of trying to incorporate exercise and weight training. But to do what you're doing, where you're doing all the things right, paired with the weight training, like it really does. I mean, the research has shown that it's so vital to maintaining longevity, like all the way through 60s, 70s, 80s. Like that's real, and especially at a drastic. And I'd like to hear that you're kind of at good maintenance now. Mm-hmm. And I think, and that's one thing I was going to ask you was, has your dosage changed at all? Like as far as like how much of like the GLP-1 you're taking, you're taking a little bit less now, or is that something that is recommended?
Yeah. So I can only speak about my own journey with this, but I know several people that have taken it, that are taking it, or thinking about taking it. I started out with a small dose of 0.25 milligrams, I think it is. And then you gradually build it up. I do take a compound of it. Terzepatide is what I take. And I built it up. 1 month I was 0.25, next month 0.5. The highest I ever got for 1 month was 0.75, which it does go higher. But I honestly was taking off weight pretty quickly because I was doing all the right things. My doctor keeps saying that, you know, I'm a little bit of a poster child in her practice as well. She said, you're doing all the right things. You can't just take the shot. You will lose weight, but that's not the healthy way of doing it.
You need all the behaviors.
It has to be all the behaviors, all the lifestyle changes. My diet, I eat so much better than I used to, just consciously. Protein. You know, I don't have food noise. You hear that term a lot with GLP. Which it's weird. It's true because I'm a sweet eater. And to sit around at 8 o'clock at night and not have urgings to go get a piece of cake, it's kind of odd.
So over time, the expectation I would assume is to take the dosage way down to a maintenance dose. And if you're doing all the right behaviors, which it sounds like you are, potentially even coming off the drug altogether because your behaviors now carry you and maintain you going forward. I know there's a lot of people who think if you take a GLP-1, you lose weight, and as soon as you stop taking it, the weight goes back up. Well, that would be true if you don't change any behaviors.
Correct.
Right? If you put in all the right behaviors for weight training and eating properly and getting all your protein and not being in a calorie surplus, you shouldn't need them anymore. Is that the long-term goal for you?
It is. I'm back down to 0.25.
Nice. So it is come way
where
down.
I started.
Awesome.
I've been on this now for 6 or 8 weeks at the minimum. The next step may be to go to take the shot every 2 weeks.
Right. Elongate.
To wean off. It's amazing though how it does affect your brain a little bit. Things like alcohol. I drink much less than I used to. You don't have the desire.
Right.
You know, there's been studies about this being used in drug and alcohol treatment for other things besides just weight loss.
Probably related to the food noise. It's there's like an addictive chemical process in the brain that is partly the food noise thing, but also seems to have some sort of similarities with alcoholism, tobacco use, gambling even.
Sure.
You know, so it's possible it just happens to trigger that same feedback loop.
Sure. So yeah, that's my goal is to get, potentially get off of it. But again, it's amazing how more and more studies come out, just more and more positive effects mentally on your brain. I think a lot of it may have to do with inflammation.
Could
less
be.
inflammation you have, less chance of Alzheimer's, things of that nature. But we'll see. I mean, to me, I fully admit it's a fairly new thing. There's not a lot of long-term studies.
Not yet.
So I just talk about what my experience has been.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. We definitely appreciate you telling that. And the other thing I would say too is even if the only benefit is it helps you lose weight, we know that has a lot of great knock-on effects, right? Like we said, you have less chance of progressing to diabetes and to heart disease and cancer. The last part I think we should talk about on this particular topic before we go to creatine is we've done podcasts before, and I think all of our members really know we talk about how to lift heavy for you, what that means. And I think it applies very much in this case, but really in almost all cases. When you come to the gym, some people hit plateaus. They work out and then they stop seeing the beginner gains. We've talked about this before, and it requires you to push through even a little bit harder. Going with a different range of motion or a heavier weight or whatever.
Or as you start to lose weight, the fact that you hit the plateau where you're not losing any more weight, so you might have to be in a little bit more of a calorie deficit because, again, there is less of you, so your BMR overall goes down. So it's like that's something that people don't maybe check in with themselves as they start to lose weight. Now they're like, well, I lost 10 pounds. I haven't lost another pound since. Well, now there's less of you, so we got to kind of dial that back a little bit. But I think I think the full circle thing here is just the habits that you're forming. And going back to the stigma, there was especially in the beginning, it was like seen as like cheating, quote unquote, for some people. But I'm like, it's really just used as a tool. And if you're developing all the right habits, if you're doing everything else right, taking in protein, weight training, and doing all those things, then again, the goal is to go off of it, and all of a sudden you've got all these new habits that you're doing just on your own, and it all becomes behavioral. And
exactly.
I think that's so important that if they're they're desperate and they just want to they want to make it happen now, and they're thinking about the GLP-1. You know, again, we're not medical experts, but definitely talk to your doctor and definitely see if it's something that you could do for like a short term.
Well, and don't do it unless you're ready to make a behavior change, right?
Absolutely.
Because otherwise,
Yes.
you're just going to be at the yo-yo of taking the drug and not taking the drug, and,
Correct.
and your weight will bounce around. But if you can use the benefit of this to create these great habits, like I watch Chuck in the gym every day. He's never not lifting something heavy. I mean, it's so great to watch, and seeing him progress in his weight since he joined. You know, what were you benching when you first came to Level Up?
140.
And what are you benching now?
210.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I mean, in less than a year, right? In 6 months, 8 months. I mean, that's a tremendous difference. And there's less of you.
And
as
less
Tyler
body
said.
mass. Yeah, there's less of Chuck.
I always said my goal, I had never in my life lifted my weight or bench pressed
weight,
my
yeah.
weight. And a lot of it because I was fat. I had a lot more to bench. And you have that crossover where your weight's going down and your bench is going up.
Impressive.
And that's really just very satisfying
Yeah. Yep.
to get to that point. You know, there's a lot of guys in the gym half my age benching twice my weight, but I don't care. I'm not at that point in my life.
Well, there's also a lot of people who are younger than you that are not benching anywhere close to your weight. You know,
Very true.
You know,
I heard a good message earlier about this, that I'm not only trying to lose weight, I'm trying to gain health.
Yes.
And that's what I'm doing. It's not just about losing weight.
Absolutely. Well, Chuck, I really appreciate, we both really appreciate you sharing this with our members for sure. And I think this is an efficient way to get your message out, you know, because I know you talk one-on-one with a lot of people, but I'm sure there's a lot more who could benefit from your story.
Yeah, I'm happy. I just figure if I step out of the shadows, so to speak, and let people know, because I know a lot of people around town, and if they have questions. I read yesterday that roughly 12% of the U.S. adults are either on it or have been on it.
Yep.
So it's there.
Yeah, and there is a lot of misinformation about it. You know, like I said, we're not medical people, but we can see a lot of the misinformation just that doesn't make any sense about it. And we know that people want to get to a better weight, you know, usually. And what they really mean is they want to eliminate body fat. But in order to do that, sometimes you just need a tool, you know, to get you to those healthy behaviors like you've done. I think, you know, your doctor's saying that you're a poster child, you know, for her patients. I can see why. I mean, you've changed all these behaviors for the positive. It's amazing.
But as you said, strength training, again, studies after study after study talks about strength training and lifting weights. And you have people in our gym that are in their 70s that show up and they're lifting.
Especially the ladies.
I'm amazed. It's fantastic.
It's the best. Yeah.
It's
great.
I mean, I look at them going, if they can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And I want to be a role model for someone else to say, I can do it. But there's more to it.
I think you already are that role model for a lot of people. Thank you for telling that, Chuck. Sharing your story.
Sure.
We're going to pivot right into creatine now, and I want to keep you here just part of this conversation because it's a little bit complementary for sure into this discussion about weight loss, and but we're going to talk a little bit more sciencey now. We get asked about creatine all the time, and not unlike the GLP-1s, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation about there. The good news is for creatine, it's actually been studied a lot longer than GLP-1s have. There's a ton of data out there on very good randomized control trials. So there actually is some good information that we can take out of there. Even though we're not medical professionals, we know how to do research and we know how to accumulate information. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then the best part is that there's new studies coming out all the time of like some new benefits they're finding with creatine. So we'll kind of touch on some of those like a little bit today, but we really want to kind of go over some of the hard facts that creatine can provide, or some of the benefits that it can provide that we know of, especially when it comes to muscle building. So I don't know if you want to describe.
Maybe we'll just start with what even is creatine. Let's go to the base level. We're going to kind of build on this. We're going to talk about what it is, how it works in the body, what are the benefits and risks of it. And maybe like what does the science kind of tell us, right? So let's start with what is creatine. And I think there has been a lot of belief that this is like a steroid or it's some sort of crazy supplement or whatever. It is not. Creatine monohydrate, or creatine, but creatine monohydrate in particular, is a naturally occurring compound that happens in your body, and it comes from amino acids. It comes from food for the most part. It's also naturally produced in the liver, kidneys, and pancreas. And you can actually increase your creatine consumption by eating red meat and fish, but you'd have to eat a whole lot of it to get enough creatine, and you would take in a tremendous number of calories doing that too. There's a lot of different formulations of creatine that you can buy as a supplement. The most common one and the most well-studied one is just basic creatine monohydrate. It's a very simple product. There's a whole bunch of other ones that are out there that claim to be better or better on your digestive system or that get absorbed slower or whatever. It's all nonsense. At the end of the day, creatine monohydrate, the very basic, is the most widely studied and has the best efficacy and safety profile of all of the others. And it's the cheapest too. So if you're looking to
well, that's the thing. And especially for someone that isn't consuming a lot of like meat or red meat, like if someone that's vegan, you know, their creatine storage might be a little bit on the low side. So to supplement the creatine monohydrate, even just 5 grams a day can, like, as shown, to give them vast improvements in, like, you know, physical and even some cognitive areas.
Yeah, and before we get a little bit deeper into creatine, we should just talk about supplementation in general, right? So there are a tremendous number of supplements out there, and you can go on Amazon or you can go into Vitamin Shop, you can go in anywhere. You're going to see tons and tons and tons of them. Most of them don't have very robust science behind them, and even if they do, there's typically not much benefit to them. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. There are some that are more well-studied and some that do have some benefits. Creatine is one that actually has a ton of data behind it, and it shows to be pretty beneficial and very low risk, right? So that's one of the reasons why we're talking about creatine in particular versus anything else, right?
Correct.
Is there any other supplements that you think we will have to talk about at some point, or is this like the one that we...
It's really the only one, maybe aside from like maybe a protein isolate that actually, and again, that's actual like food you're taking in. But as far, I mean, you talk about branched chain amino acids, you know, different pre-workouts that have a whole bunch of proprietary blends that have things that tell you they're going to enhance your workouts, when really the creatine monohydrate is one that just at a baseline has so many benefits for your body. And so the research says.
Right. So let's talk about those benefits, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to tell you what the science says the benefits seem to be. And we're going to spend like a minute or two talking about how that actually works in your body, because I think it's important to understand what creatine actually does in your body to demystify a little bit why it's not like, you know, a steroid or anything like that. You know, that it's a very basic compound that does some very basic things in the body that are very beneficial. So let's talk a little bit about what the studies say the benefits of creatine are. And these are only things that we've looked at from robust randomized clinical control trials. These are not from social media. These are science-based, peer-reviewed studies, right? Right,
yeah. And I think to start would be like how creatine, like what the effect is in the body, like what actually does, and it's energy production. It allows you to push further into a set if you're working out to get a couple extra reps that maybe you wouldn't have been able to get if you weren't on the creatine. Mm-hmm. So it is very, very, and what that allows for you is if you're able to put out more volume into the gym, if you can lift more weight in a given set, put out more sets and reps, then basically that allows for more results. And that is what's actually driving the results, is the work you're doing. But that's what the creatine supplement can help with, is like driving more energy to the cells. That way you can continue to put more output.
Yeah, just to tag on to that, right? So the way the best analogy I've heard about creatine is it's almost like a battery pack, right? If your cell phone is, you know, getting low on battery, and you take one of those battery packs and you plug it in and it recharges your phone really fast, that's essentially what creatine does. And so your body, as you're working out or running or whatever, requires energy, right? And it gets that energy from ATP, right? Adenosine triphosphate, right? What creatine does is when you do the work, like if you're doing a set, the energy is coming from adenosine triphosphate being separated into adenosine diphosphate, ADP, plus phosphorus, right? And so that's that breaking of the bonds is what brings the energy for you to do the lift. What creatine does is it brings phosphorus back to ADP to recreate the ATP for the next thif right? So it's restoring that energy, hence the battery pack.
Which is why which again, going off your point, which is why at high level exercise, like a sprint, if you're sprinting full speed at 100 meters, you slow down after that. If you took creatine, you might be able to maintain that effort and speed for an extra 10 to 20 meters.
Yeah.
That's a more or less kind of a simple way to kind of look at it, and showing like that's the slight benefit of it. But again, it is slight.
Well, it also does help with recovery too, right? Yes. So again, once you deplete the ATP energy stores you need to recover. And you can recover that without creatine through normal rest and food intake, right? Eventually it replenishes and brings phosphorus back to the ADP to create ATP. Creatine makes that happen faster.
Yeah, almost instantly in some cases. Yeah.
Right. So some of the benefits that are pretty clear from the studies are one, it increases the size of your lean mass. Now, the interesting thing about that, this is where people think it's maybe it's a steroid. It's not a steroid. The way that creatine works is it's also what's called an osmolyte, which essentially means it pulls water into the cells, and in this case, muscle cells, because that's where it's stored. It pulls water into the muscle, makes it look bigger. Now, your muscles are mostly water. So it's not surprising that your muscles look bigger when more water comes into the cell. So it does help with lean mass. It helps with muscle recovery. That's really what it's primarily doing. It seems to have some cognitive benefits too. These are some of the newer studies. Now, it's very early, and these are relatively small trials so far. So it's hard to say exactly why this is working. We understand how it works in muscle a lot better than how it works in brain. But it does seem to have some benefits for cognition, memory, even depression symptoms, especially for those who are already on SSRI, depression drugs. It seems to actually make those even more effective. So, but we don't know why yet, because the brain is very different than the muscle. We know the brain needs creatine too, just like muscles do, probably because it requires so much energy. Your brain, but we don't know exactly why. So we're not going to go into too much of the cognitive benefits because they're not as well understood yet.
Yeah, no, and the reason they found this to be true, or what they're finding with the research, is like after 5 grams, what they realize is if there's any spillover from that initial dosage of the muscles, it gets spilled over into the brain, and that's where they're seeing, people that are on creatine, they're anecdotally a little bit happier, their mood's a little bit better, and like, that's kind of interesting. And now they're experimenting with like higher doses, between 10 and in some cases what they call a heroic dose of 30 grams.
30 grams, yeah.
Which is insane, but I mean but again, the research is still happening. Right?
And let's just talk about, again, dosage for a second, because the way creatine works is you don't take it and it just automatically works right away. Okay. In order for it to help with muscle recovery and muscle mass, you have to saturate the muscles with creatine, right? So over the course of about 2 to 3 weeks at 5 grams per day, eventually your muscles become saturated with creatine. And then you hit like a level where your muscles are constantly using that creatine to regenerate ATP. And then you're only taking 5 grams a day just to maintain that saturation, right? And it'll stay that way. If you stop taking creatine, it would probably take 2 or 3 weeks for your muscles to unsaturate again. But the idea is just to take it regularly every day, 5 grams, which is like a tiny little scoop of it. And you mix it in with your water or your electrolyte drink or protein shake or whatever you want. And that's all you need. Right. That's really all you need. That's very, very cheap, very, very easy.
And that's why people, I think, like it so much, is that it is cheap. Again, a big tub of it is only like $30. And that's a big old, and you look at it, if you've never purchased creatine before, you think you're getting like ripped off, or you're not ripped off, but you're like, this is almost too good to be true. It's like this, and it's this white powder that it kind of cakes together, and you're like, is this really the thing? But that's truly like all you need. And only 5 grams a day to really get some of those muscle benefits.
Right. And again, it is a lot on recovery. And going back to what we were talking about with Chuck, where you're lifting heavy in the gym, and especially if you're in a calorie deficit, like energy levels are difficult to maintain. So having a natural product that helps you regenerate that energy store, the ATP that you need, helps with your ability to lift heavy when you're in the gym, to recover at night, come back the next day and work out.
Yeah. And Chuck, I actually want to turn to you real quick, because you mentioned before that you've kind of supplemented a little bit with creatine now. When did you start did you start it kind of around the same time you did the GLP-1? Was it like 6 months after? When did you kind of start
No, I started probably this summer. It's about 3 months after I started, doing the shots.
Yeah.
Because again, I, listen to you guys. I listen to different things about strength training and what can help, right? And creatine just kept coming up over and over. As Dan said, it's a natural thing. There's no side effects to it. I've heard people say in the past, it'll make you bloated. Yeah. What else are you doing to bloat yourself maybe? But I can vouch. I mean, I'm always a little bit sore just because but I'm so much less sore and as far as the recovery. And a lot of it, I don't know if it's mentally, do I feel sharper? Yeah. What exactly can I attribute it to? I don't,
say. Yeah.
can't say, but everything I'm doing, I'm happy. I'm crystal clear mentally very often. One question I have though, Dan, about creatine is, does it matter when you take it during the day?
Great question. The answer is no, because you're essentially just keeping the saturation level that's in your muscles. So it does not typically matter when you take it. I've seen some people who believe that if you put it in something hot like coffee, it might degenerate or denature it a little bit. I'm not sure that's actually true. I've heard some of the same about protein. I'm not sure that's actually true either. So maybe don't put it in a hot beverage. But other than that, the time of day doesn't really matter as long as you're keeping the saturation of your muscles over time. You just don't want to go an extended period of time without it, meaning more than a week or two.
The biggest thing is keeping it like in your routine, like when can you get the creatine in? If it's like the first thing in the morning, that's when you have time to actually make the drink that has the creatine in it, then so be it. It's just kind of whenever you're able to make it work in your routine.
It's more of the habit of it.
More of a habit, yeah.
Let's talk about the risks though, because again, a lot of misinformation here. Now, we're not going to go out on a limb and say there are no risks to creatine because there's risks to pretty much anything, right? So I wouldn't say there's none, but I think again there's a lot of misinformation here. You talked about bloating. Bloating is one of the more common things that we hear about creatine, and I would say there's usually one of two things happening if creatine is bloating you, and bloating meaning like you're feeling like bigger, heavier, lethargic. It feels like you're retaining water. Now, creatine does help you retain water, but in the muscle, right? Intracellular water, not extracellular water, which is typically what bloating feels like. So usually what's happening if you are getting bloating from creatine is you're doing a loading dose. Instead of doing 5 grams a day, you may be loading with 20 grams a day. Some people think you should do that to get the muscle stores faster. Don't need to do that.
Yeah, the research has shown that that's not something that needs to be done. Like you could just be fine with just the maintenance of taking it 5 grams a day and you'll be just fine.
Right. So I would tell people don't do a loading dose after 2 to 3 weeks with 5 grams. You're saturated. So some people, creatine does irritate the gut for some people who have sensitive tummies. So that in that case, maybe you want to break up the 5 grams into maybe 2.5 grams a day, or maybe even less than that, just to not have it hit the stomach all at one time. And just drinking a lot of water helps too. It just smooths it out.
Yeah, and if you're newer to creatine, you don't even have to start with 5 grams. Start with 2 to 3 grams.
Sure.
Like you could do like a half scoop and just kind of see how your body responds to it. They even say that if they're starting to come out where if you're like a larger individual, if you're like over 200, over 100 kilograms or 200 pounds, that up in your dose to closer to 10 grams, it's actually giving you the full benefit, because obviously it makes sense. If there's more of you want to take in like more so you can get full saturation of all your muscle.
Right.
So somebody that's only 120 pounds, 3 to 5 grams will probably work. So again, you got to play around what's best for you. It's like any other supplement. You have to kind of see what dosage works and what you're able to, how your stomach is able to hold up with it.
Does it matter if you're male or female? Do you see any differences with that?
No. In fact, there's some evidence that so here's where it gets a little debatable. There's some evidence that because women on average have less lean muscle mass, they have less ability to store creatine, which means they would need more creatine, right? So it might be even more beneficial for women. Some of the cognitive benefits seem to be even better for women in the early data that we've seen. But I would say for now, just assume it's similar. The benefits are similar and the risk profile is similar. There's some worry on some other side effects or risks that I think would be more dangerous if they were true. And I can understand scaring people away. So there is a concern that creatine can lead to kidney or liver damage. Now, the rationale behind these is because when you are looking for kidney damage in people, you're usually measuring their creatinine levels in their blood, not creatine, creatinine levels in their blood. And one of the things that creatine does do is it does also raise your serum creatinine levels. But just because you have high creatinine levels doesn't mean you have kidney disease. Just a lot of people who have kidney disease have that as a marker, right? So the other thing that causes high creatinine levels is muscle mass. So just by building muscle mass, whether you had creatine or not, would raise your creatinine levels too. So just because you have high creatinine does not mean you have kidney damage, but people who have kidney damage typically have high creatinine. So a lot of times there's a belief that just because you raise the serum creatinine that you may be causing kidney damage. That doesn't seem to be the case. There's been very well design trials to get at this risk in particular, and it does not appear that creatine affects kidney or liver function in any way. So that's something that I think is good to debunk. That being said, most medical professionals will say if you already do have kidney damage, you definitely want to talk to your doctor before taking creatine, because you need to, if you have excess creatine, floating around, the kidneys do have to flush it out. And if you have some damage already, you may have trouble flushing anything out, not just creatine, but anything. So, does it cause liver or kidney damage? The science says pretty clearly no. But if you already have some sort of kidney or liver damage, maybe you may not want to take creatine, and you definitely want to talk to your doctor about it. So that's something I think is important to get across.
No, I mean, you hit every point on the head. You said everything I was going to say.
Okay.
Is that,
well, maybe you could hit the other one, which has been a more interesting one, which is people worry that, and especially women worry about taking creatine because there was one study that showed that it might be correlated with hair loss.
Yeah, which is also a myth. It was one study back in, I think it was 2009, where they measured DHT levels in people that took creatine,
which is a hormone level.
And there was some elevation in it, but it wasn't enough to make anything really confirm, and they haven't been able to replicate really any type of those results since. So, and again, that was almost 16 years ago now. So it's,
and that study was teeny tiny,
small sample size.
It did not measure actual hair loss. It only mentioned, it was only studying DHT, the hormone DHT, which, by the way, DHT, when it is elevated, can lead to hair loss. Again, just like creatinine doesn't have to lead to damage. It could. They did not study it, but then a subsequent very well controlled study from, I think, last year or 2 years ago was specifically looking at hair loss from creatine and found that there was none. There were literally none. And actually in that study, even DHT levels did not go up either. They measured both actual hair loss and DHT. So badly designed trial, seemed to indicate maybe something, and then a well-designed trial seems to refute that. So that's something I think is important to get across too. Yeah,
when it comes to if you guys are doing your own research on creatine, look for big sample sizes, because there's over 1,000 peer-reviewed studies now.
There's tons of them.
There's tons of them, so there's no reason why we should be looking at the small sample sizes. I get if they're looking for a small nuance in what creatine can and can't do, but look at the ones that have 500 to 1,000 people where they're looking at them. They even have ones that have been over a year of looking at somebody of results from creatine. So if you're really not sure, the good news is you have AI, and you can just say, hey, give me the highest participant level of all these studies so I can really get a good answer.
One thing I said, there was 2 reasons why you might be getting bloating, and I only talked about one of them, which is that the loading dose was what I said. If you're loading it, you may actually get some pretty significant water retention. The other reason why you might be getting bloating is how you're consuming the creatine. In what form are you doing it? If you're, I took creatine in a gummy formation for a while, and that just crushed my stomach. I wasn't getting bloating. It just hurt my stomach a lot. And so sometimes it's whatever the delivery mechanism is, could be causing a side effect, a GI side effect or a bloating side effect. When I switched to just the powdered normal creatine monohydrate, every symptom went away.
Well, and isn't the Haribo sugar-free bears, those are super high in fiber because they take the sugar out? I think it's the same problem with the creatine.
Fiber. Some of them have sugar alcohols. Those are also gut irritants.
Sugar alcohol, yeah.
So there's usually something, people like to take something that tastes yummy. Creatine doesn't taste like anything. It's a flavorless powder, typically. So I mix mine in with an electrolyte drink, so it tastes like the electrolyte drink. It doesn't taste like anything else. But, so there are things that, you could have some gut issues. There have been some, I would say that's the most common side effect of creatine, is that for sensitive tummies, it might have an issue. Usually if you drink a lot of water, it ameliorates that. Or if you, dose a couple times during the day, it usually ameliorates that. But, it's important to know that the side effect profile is very, very benign for creatine. It's the only reason why we're talking about it. If we thought there was effectiveness, but also some pretty bad side effects, we would not be recommending it to anybody. The science on this is pretty clear that there is incremental benefit, very little detriment to it, and it's very, very cheap.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the last thing to ask is, do we have to take creatine? Is it something that is it necessary? Is it imperative?
I think this is the most important takeaway from this. I hope we at least explain creatine to people so they understand it and they understand the benefits and risk profile. I think the answer to this, do you have to take creatine, in my mind, is an absolute no, you do not have to take creatine. The benefits of creatine are incremental. They're not magic. Okay. It's not life-changing. Okay, these are incremental. Does it help you recover faster? Yes. Does it help you build lean mass? Yes. Modestly, right? These things are modest benefits, but they're real, and they're very consistent benefits. And maybe in the brain function over time, maybe we will find that it really is worth taking creatine. As of right now, the science is not definitive enough to say it and what dosage. So I would say, do you have to take it? No, you don't have to take it. Are you going to be incrementally better if you take it? For most people, probably a little bit. Yeah. But when you put the size of the impact, and this is where I think it's really important to look at this. If you take nutrition, you take strength training, you take cardiovascular activity, sleep, and creatine. Creatine is by far the smallest impact of that. Okay, so your nutrition and your fitness regimen is 95% of the benefit you're going to get, maybe even more. Creatine is that little extra. Is it good? It's great, but you have to remember this is like incremental. The benefit, like you're getting, Chuck, from eating healthy things, all your healthy habits, you're lifting heavy weights. Those are the biggest driver.
And that's like any supplement, guys. Like anything that you're going to take it's a supplemental, it's like you should be doing all those other things first, and that's where you will see the true benefit of the supplement. If you're getting your sleep, eating right, you're lifting, or you're working out, you don't have to be lifting weights. We say lifting weights, but anything, and you're using the supplement, then you might be able to see those slight changes because you're focusing so much on your performance. And that's the important, and that's why creatine, to us seems like a pretty simple thing to incorporate into your routine, because you've got, it's cheap. You can take it with any type of liquid. You could take it straight water, whatever. You build into your routine. It takes 30 seconds, and then you're on your way, and you don't really have to think about it again. So that's, and again, it's a small benefit, but if you can work it in, then there might be some benefit to it.
And it rounds out like all of these things, right, that we're talking about, which is like if you take creatine, but you don't lift heavy weights, you're probably not getting much of the benefit of creatine. If you eat a lot of protein, but you don't lift weights, you're not really doing, you're not growing muscle mass, right? Mm-hmm. So like these things all work in combination together. It's just the heavy lifting, no pun intended, is from your diet and your strength training and your cardiovascular activity and sleep. Sleep is an underrated, one, because you can't really recharge very well if you're not sleeping very well. And then these kind of things, the supplementation, especially with things like creatine, are definitely incremental, but they're the smaller piece.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was great. I think we hit every nail on the head that we needed to.
Did we miss anything, Chuck?
Did we miss anything? Any other questions?
You taught me a lot. That's great. You have taught me a lot over the past year, for sure.
Well, that's what we're hoping for. And so this is great because I think we tackled some interesting topics today on weight loss, GLP-1s assisting in weight loss, how to lift heavy to preserve muscle mass, incremental benefits from supplementation on things like creatine. If you guys have any ideas out there on things that you would love to know, I mean, creatine was, I think, the number one by far thing that people wanted to know. But if there's other things that, Tyler and I can help with, we would love to know.
Absolutely. So I think with that, guys, I think it's good that we wrap this one up. Right, I think that was awesome. But yeah, if you remember, you guys can follow us. If you are not already, we have our Instagram, Level Up Fit FLA. We have our website, www.levelupfitfl.com. YouTube page, the Level Up Lab. You can see all of the recent, the previous episodes. And we look forward to the next one, guys. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. See you soon.